Be me, professional freelance photographer. My company, Lens Legacy Photography, handles high-end events, luxury weddings, and exclusive corporate galas in the Gilded Enclave. My reputation is built on meticulous planning, flawless execution, and an ironclad commitment to my clients' visions. I document everything. Every email, every text, every verbal conversation summary, time-stamped, filed. It's a habit that's saved my skin more times than I can count. My gear is top tier, my team is experienced, and my contracts are reviewed by legal counsel annually. We don't cut corners. Be not me, Serafina Lux. Serafina is a lifestyle influencer with 5 million followers and a personality that could curdle milk. She specializes in demanding free services for exposure, then complaining about the quality when she gets exactly what she paid for. Nothing. Her current obsession was her dream wedding and the accompanying content creation bonanza. She planned to milk this for months. Serafina contacted me through my website, bypassing the standard inquiry form. She directly messaged my personal studio line. The first interaction was a preview of the disaster to come. "Darling, Serafina Lux here," her email began, entirely devoid of a subject line. "My engagement shoot needs to be epic. Think Vogue cover, but like more epic. I want you and only you to shoot it, for free, of course. The exposure will be insane." I checked her social media. 5 million followers, yes, but her engagement rates were abysmal. Mostly bots and sponsored content comments. Her exposure was hollow. My standard rate for an engagement shoot starts at $10,000, not including travel or permits. This was a non-starter. I responded professionally, explaining my rates and policies. I offered a reduced package for new clients, but made it clear that exposure was not a form of payment. Serafina replied instantly, "You don't understand, darling. My followers are your future clients. Think about the reach. I need to do a dramatic cliffside shoot at sunset with a custom-built floral arch. I'll get the arch built, you just bring your best drone and your most creative eye." I sighed. A custom-built floral arch on a cliffside required permits, structural engineering assessment, and a dedicated setup crew, especially if it was a significant size. It also needed to be perfectly weighted against strong ocean winds. I explained these safety and logistical requirements in detail. I quoted a price for supervising the setup and coordinating with her arch vendor, as well as the actual shoot. Serafina completely ignored the safety concerns and the cost. "My cousin's boyfriend builds things. He's good with his hands. He'll handle the arch. I just need you there, with your drone, capturing my vision." She even sent me a link to a poorly photoshopped image of a massive, impossibly cantilevered arch, covered in white roses, perched precariously on a jagged cliff edge. It looked like it would topple with a strong breeze. This was a major red flag. My company policy explicitly stated we would not photograph or be associated with any event setup deemed structurally unsound or unsafe by our on-site team. I reiterated my policy, clearly stating I would need full schematics and proof of professional installation for any large-scale prop, especially one in an exposed location. I also reminded her that drone operations required specific permits for that location. Serafina's response was a petulant, single line, "Fine, no drone, just make it look good. My cousin's boyfriend is a genius." She then ghosted my emails for a week. I archived the entire conversation, just in case. 3 weeks later, Serafina reappeared, demanding to book her wedding photography package. This time, she offered to pay my lowest tier rate. It was a package I usually reserved for small, intimate ceremonies, not the elaborate production she was describing. I accepted. Partially, I admit, out of a morbid curiosity. I sent her the contract. It was standard for my basic services: 8 hours of coverage, 1 photographer, me, digital delivery, no physical album. The contract explicitly stated that I was responsible for photography services only. Any props, decor, or structural elements were the client's responsibility, and their safety was paramount. Serafina signed it without reading. I knew this because she immediately started demanding things not included in the package. "Darling, for the reception, I need a content creation station. A huge floral arch, even bigger than the one I wanted for the engagement. It needs to be the centerpiece. My cousin's boyfriend will build it again. He's amazing." This time, The arch was for an indoor reception at the prestigious Azure Ballroom in the Gilded Enclave, a venue with strict regulations. I mentally pictured the Azure Ballroom. It had very specific load-bearing limits for hanging installations, and any freestanding structures over a certain height required sign-off from the venue's facilities manager and an external structural engineer. I immediately informed Serafina of these venue requirements. I told her that any arch exceeding 8 feet in height or 6 feet in width would need engineering certification and a professional installation team, approved by the Azure. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, darling," Serafina chirped back. "It's just flowers. My cousin's boyfriend knows what he's doing. He built the one for my bridal shower, and it only leaned a little bit." My internal alarm bells screamed. I documented her exact words and sent them to the Azure Ballroom's event coordinator, outlining my concerns. The coordinator, bless her, was equally alarmed. She informed Serafina directly of the venue's policies. Serafina, however, saw this as a challenge. She insisted her arch would be custom designed and unique. She refused to pay for a professional structural assessment, claiming it was overpriced nonsense. She insisted her cousin's boyfriend, Chad, would handle everything. The week before the wedding, I sent the final invoice for my basic photography services. It was for the agreed-upon amount, clearly itemizing the hours and deliverables. Serafina's reply was terse. "I don't understand this invoice. I thought this was for exposure. My engagement shoot wasn't free. You charged me for that." I politely reminded her that the engagement shoot had been explicitly declined, and the current invoice was for her wedding photography, for which she had signed a contract. "This is outrageous. You're trying to nickel and dime me. After all the exposure I've given you," she wrote back, a clear sign she had never intended to pay. She then continued, "And about the arch, darling. Chad says the Azure Ballroom's rules are stupid. He's going to build it exactly as I designed it. It's for my vision. You just need to make sure you capture it perfectly." This was the breaking point. She was not only refusing payment, but also deliberately flouting venue safety regulations and attempting to put the onus on me for the visual outcome. My blood ran cold. This was no longer just about non-payment. This was about a colossal public safety hazard that she was forcing into existence. I went into read-only mode. I stopped arguing, stopped advising. I started documenting with a vengeance. I pulled up my employee handbook. Section 14, subsection B. Photographers are required to document all client-requested deviations from standard safety protocols, especially when these deviations involve significant structural elements or potential hazards. Documentation must include clients' explicit verbal and written instructions, any waivers signed, and clear photographic evidence of the conditions. I also found a clause in the venue's terms of service, which Serafina had also signed when booking the ballroom, stating that any client-provided decor must adhere to specific safety standards and be approved by the venue prior to installation. Failure to comply would result in immediate removal of the item at the client's expense and potential liability. I opened a new, dedicated digital folder. Project Serafina. First, I forwarded Serafina's "Chad says the rules are stupid" email to the Azure Ballroom coordinator, noting that I would be following my company's documentation policies regarding client-provided decor. I contacted my own legal counsel. They advised me to proceed with the photography as per the signed contract, but to ensure every single instruction regarding the arch came directly from Serafina, in writing if possible. If verbal, it needed to be immediately confirmed in a follow-up email. I compiled every email, every text message, every social media direct message from Serafina, where she mentioned the arch, Chad, or her refusal to comply with safety regulations. I also took screenshots of Serafina's social media posts, where she hyped up her custom and unique arch, often tagging Chad's nascent craftsman page. 2 days before the wedding, Chad, Serafina, and 2 of his buddies arrived at the Azure Ballroom with materials. I was there early to set up my lighting and conduct a final walkthrough. My assistant, Sarah, was with me, setting up backup cameras. The arch frame arrived in pieces. It was a flimsy structure of thin aluminum tubing, spray-painted gold, designed to look massive but clearly unstable. Chad and his friends, who looked more like fraternity brothers than professional riggers, began assembling it. It was clearly going to exceed the Azure's height and width limits. I started taking photos, not of my setup, but of theirs. Time-stamped, high-resolution images of every step of their installation. I documented the lack of proper base weights, the shoddy joinery, the fact that they were using zip ties where industrial bolts were required. Serafina flounced in, phone in hand, live streaming. "Darling, isn't it fabulous? Chad is a genius. Ignore the venue's silly rules. This is my vision." She gestured grandly at the teetering structure. I simply nodded, my camera silently clicking away. I sent a quick, polite email to Serafina, confirming that per our discussions, your custom floral arch is being installed by your team, led by Chad exactly to your specifications, without structural engineering approval from the Azure Ballroom, and without professional rigging. Lens Legacy Photography's role today is solely to capture the visual aspects of your event as per our signed contract. Her reply came almost immediately. "Yes, darling, that's exactly right. Chad knows best." Boom. Got it in writing. The wedding day arrived. The Azure Ballroom was packed. The reception was in full swing. Serafina was reveling in the attention, posing endlessly in front of her monstrous floral arch. It stood over 10 feet tall, probably 12 feet wide, and was covered in thousands of fresh roses. It swayed gently every time someone walked by, but Serafina was oblivious. I had positioned myself and Sarah to ensure we had clear sightlines, not just for the best shots, but for observation. I had also discreetly informed the Azure's event manager, Miss Davies, about my ongoing documentation and concerns, sharing the email chain. She had deployed 2 of her most burly security staff near the arch, just in case, but they were instructed not to interfere unless absolutely necessary. Venue policy was clear. Client provided decor, client assumes liability. Serafina decided it was time for the grand photo op. She dragged her new husband, a bewildered-looking man named Kevin, in front of the arch. "Everyone, gather round. My vision," she shrieked, striking a pose. Dozens of guests crowded around, phones out, all focused on Serafina and the arch. I felt a faint tremor through the floor. The air conditioning kicked on, sending a gentle gust of air through the ballroom. The arch groaned, a soft, splintering sound. Serafina, mid-pose, was oblivious. "Isn't it divine, darling?" she asked Kevin. Then, slowly at first, then with a terrifying acceleration, the arch began to lean. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone screamed. The top portion, heavy with roses and a hidden LED strip, peeled away from the flimsy base. It crashed down, narrowly missing Serafina's head, landing with a sickening thud directly onto the dessert table. A tower of champagne flutes shattered. The 5-tier wedding cake collapsed into a floral, sugary mess. Plates, silverware, and decorative elements flew. Mass hysteria erupted. Guests scattered, shrieking. Kevin pulled Serafina away, just as the main vertical supports buckled and the rest of the arch came down in a cascade of gold-painted aluminum and white roses. Serafina turned, her face a mask of pure fury, not fear. "My cake, my vision, Lens Legacy, you ruined it. This is your fault for not securing it properly," she shrieked, pointing directly at me. The Azure Ballroom's general manager, Mr. Thompson, and Miss Davies rushed over, their faces grim. "What in God's name happened here?" Mr. Thompson bellowed, surveying the devastation. I calmly lowered my camera. My voice was level, almost clinical. "Mr. Thompson, Miss Davies, as per venue policy and my company's standard operating procedures, I documented the entire installation process of Miss Lux's client-provided floral arch." I held up my phone. I have time-stamped photographs of the assembly, showing the lack of professional rigging and structural support. I also have a complete email chain, including Miss Lux's explicit instructions for her team to ignore your venue's safety requirements and my warnings. Serafina's face turned from furious red to pasty white. "He's lying. He was supposed to make sure it was safe. He's the professional," she stammered, pointing at me again. Miss Davies stepped forward, a tablet in her hand. "Miss Lux, we have received copies of all communications between you and Lens Legacy. Furthermore, we have security footage showing your installation team violating multiple venue safety protocols. We explicitly warned you." Mr. Thompson's gaze was icy. Your signed contract with the Azure Ballroom clearly states you are fully liable for any damages or injuries caused by client-provided decor that does not meet our safety standards. This entire event is now compromised. My security team is clearing the ballroom. We will be assessing the full extent of the damages and invoicing you accordingly. He then turned to me. Lens Legacy, we appreciate your diligence. We will need all of your documentation immediately. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. The police were called, not for arrests, but to document the scene for insurance purposes. An incident report was filed. Serafina's dream wedding was cut short, the reception a disaster zone. Guests were ushered out, many of them openly gossiping and taking photos of the collapsed arch and ruined cake. My documentation, presented to Mr. Thompson and the Azure's legal team, was a rock-solid defense. It shielded Lens Legacy completely. Serafina and Kevin were forced to pay for the extensive damage to the ballroom, the ruined catering, and the cost of emergency cleanup. The Azure Ballroom, a very influential establishment, also made it clear she was permanently blacklisted from ever hosting an event there again. Her carefully curated wedding content strategy was in tatters. The videos and photos she did manage to post showed a brief, glorious arch, followed by a sudden cut, then her tear-streaked face complaining about vendor incompetence. It didn't stick. Update, Week 1, the news broke. Not just on local gossip blogs, but in proper entertainment news outlets. Influencers' wedding ruined by self-built arch. Azure Ballroom suffers major damage. Wedding cake disaster goes viral. The details about Serafina's demands and refusal to pay professional fees began to leak. Thanks to anonymous sources from the Azure Ballroom, and, I admit, a carefully crafted and entirely factual press release from Lens Legacy Photography, detailing our commitment to safety and our clear client communication. Her carefully constructed online persona began to crack. Sponsors started quietly dropping her. Her engagement numbers plummeted even further. My company, on the other hand, received a flurry of inquiries, many specifically mentioning my professionalism in dealing with difficult clients. Update. Month 2. The lawsuit from the Azure Ballroom against Serafina and Kevin for damages was officially filed. The cost of repairs, recatering, and lost business for the day of the incident was astronomical. Serafina tried to shift the blame to Chad, her cousin's boyfriend. But Chad, in a surprisingly savvy move, produced a series of text messages where Serafina had explicitly ordered him to ignore stupid safety rules and just make it look good for the gram. His defense worked. He wasn't a professional, he was just following a paying client's instructions. He was a friend doing a favor, not a contractor. The real kicker? The Azure Ballroom found a loophole in Serafina's booking. She had claimed her wedding guest count was 150. In reality, it was over 300, leading to a massive overcapacity issue, which contributed to the rapid collapse of the arch due to too many people moving around too close to the unstable structure. This was an additional breach of contract. Update, Month 6. Serafina Lux, once the darling of the Gilded Enclave lifestyle scene, is now a pariah. She was dropped by her last remaining sponsors, her agent terminated her contract, and her social media accounts are a wasteland of hate comments and mockery. She and Kevin are now heavily in debt, facing bankruptcy from the lawsuit. Kevin, I heard, quietly filed for divorce. The last I saw of Serafina, she was attempting to sell poorly made, mass-produced floral hair clips on an obscure online marketplace, advertising them with filtered photos from her now infamous wedding. My own business is booming. Lens Legacy Photography now has a mandatory safety compliance clause in all contracts, explicitly referencing the Serafina Arch incident as a prime example of why professional standards are non-negotiable. Some lessons, it seems, have to be learned the hard way.